You're listening to Life Check Yourself with life coach, transformational leader, and dating and relationship badass, Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important life and love issues you want to know about. So, if you're ready to life check yourself in your relationships, your career, and the areas of your life that matter most to you, and you're not afraid to be called out on your, stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
Life Check Yourself with Dr. Shawn Haywood. Does your man have the one quality he needs to create a long-term relationship? Ladies, welcome to Life Check Yourself. I know you're going to love this episode because I have Shawn Haywood here. Dr. Shawn Haywood is the founder and owner of Reimagine Love. And she's written the book called Living for Love, Set Yourself Free from the Daily Stress, Worry, and Hurry That Wears You Down. Does that sound familiar? Dr. Haywood works with couples whose marriages have fallen asleep or fallen apart, and she helps them adopt a fight-free, conflict-free relationship. And she says, yes, that is possible. She helps her clients raise sexual intimacy and desire and become best friends and teammates. And guess what? Her husband, Chris, is her business partner and also her full-time travel companion. We have to talk also about that because she, like I did for a year, she's been traveling the country as a nomad. And for the last 9 years, they've been in their camper. So as I know very well, that's a small space. So she practices what she preaches, people. And she's been doing this for, 23 years. You don't look old enough to do it for 23 years, Shawn.
Thank you.
Wait, so are you in your camper van right now? No.
Yeah, we're in our camper. It's not a camper van. It's a full size 40-foot.
Like
camper.
a fifth, do you have like a fifth wheel?
It is a fifth wheel. You got it.
Okay. It looks so nice. I know my husband wants to like peek in and see. We had a class A motorhome.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
So,
nice.
Yes. So we would always go into we'd look at the fifth wheels and be like, wow, those are really big and really nice. Because of course, if you don't know anything about RVs, what Shawn lives in doesn't have to have a motor and you don't drive that part, you tag it along behind you. So she has more room than I had.
You got it.
And it looks more like a house. I love it. Well, I'm super excited to chat with you. So like first things first, one of the things that I know you talk about is the idea that conflict-free relationships are possible. And I'm wondering, is it that because the way that you have established a foundation of communication, there's just not conflict, or that when there's a different opinion or feeling or something to come together on, it doesn't feel conflicted or it doesn't feel like conflict, which has a bad sort of meaning in our culture. Tell me, what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, that's such a fantastic question. And also, thank you for having me. I didn't get to say thank you for having me. So really kind of all the above in a way. So it is about learning how to communicate. It is about unlearning the like all of the shrouded emotion around what conflict, should mean or can mean. And then I would say the overarching principle that we teach our clients is literally to outgrow conflict. So you're not managing it. You're not like overwriting it or stuffing it in a box. You're literally learning to outgrow it as a couple. And that's
what
really
does that, what does
is.
that mean? Outgrow it. I mean, so, cause I like the word grow is in it. And I'm always like decoding sentences, and it's not one person is growing or not growing. It's as a couple. So can you elaborate on what that looks like in real life? Like give us an example.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. So I'll give you an example of old me and Chris. So I used to have, enough anger for any 30 people. And I was very good at sharing that with Chris. And I would do that in a way that was very shaming. Okay. So we teach a concept called emotional weapons, and shaming is one emotional weapon. Okay. And so let's say Chris washed the dishes, but he didn't clean out the sink. And back then, I just didn't have the wherewithal to be like, thank you so much for doing the dishes. It was, well, shit, there's schmutz all over the sink, right? And then it would be like, you can't do anything, right? And then it would just like snowball into like, well, yesterday you didn't take out the trash, and whatever the conversation was going to unfold, right? And so over time, one, the learning how to lay down emotional weapons is in large part a journey of self-discovery. So we always say that like 80% of the work we do with couples is individual and 20% is on the relationship, right? Because if I'm just angry all the time, that's not going to help me and Chris not have fighting, right? So I had to learn how to lay down some of my emotional weapons. He had to learn how to lay down his emotional weapons. And once you lay those down, then you pick up skills that are really, really juicy and connecting, right? So it might be like, one, for me, I just had to learn how to be grateful, right? Like let go of the like nitpicky stuff, and just be grateful for this amazing man. And as I became more grateful and appreciative and pointing out the things that he did amazing, it just expanded like wildfire. It was truly phenomenal. Even things like Chris was never on time of day in his life except for work. We were friends a long time before we dated and got married.
Okay.
I'd never seen him be on time. And so our sort of first year, like really together, I gave him 100% unconditional acceptance for his lateness. If it was really important to me, I'd be like, here's when I'm leaving. It's okay if you aren't ready, but you'll have to come later, right? And as I gave him that just like juicy love, he just stopped being late. Like he hasn't been late in 10 years now.
That's amazing.
So there's just so many beautiful ways to literally outgrow the conflict because you're growing so like juicy on the inside.
I was just writing about, I call that anger thing and I think there's a woman who I heard this from, and I really want to get her name right, but I'm not going to, so I'll report back later. But she calls it the rage, blame, too busy and too tired to deal with it syndrome, right? Where you're like, duh, right? Oh God, what was her name? Anyway, it was like, I can't believe you did that. Like, you don't do anything right. And then instead of dealing with your own anger or whatever is going on to focus inward and then shift into expansion, you're like, I'm too busy. I can't deal with this shit right now. Right. Or like, I'm too tired, whatever, let's watch a movie and get over it. And like, then another day happens. And so what I love about this that you're saying is that these things are patterns. And if we don't repair them, or we don't revise how we even like hold these conflicts, then we'll just keep repeating it, right? And repetition is what causes the problems.
Yeah. Well, oh my gosh. I mean, you're so 100% right. So a couple of things there. One, from a neurological perspective, once we get a pattern like anger or blame, like anything in that sort of pit, anger, blame, frustration, annoyance, any of it, then it wires to our body in really like fascinating, amazing ways. I'm sure we could nerd out for days on that.
Right.
And then your brain body connection craves that same response, right? So getting out of our own patterns is 100% the first step. So we like to teach people, the very first thing, you actually already called it out, was how to lay down blame. I dare anyone to have a fight where there's no blame. It's like, it's just not possible.
Right. The Hoffman process says everyone is guilty and no one's to blame. And I love that, right? Because, like, I love that you were so vulnerable and you shared that experience with your dishes. Because, because when you're describing it, you're saying like, well, this was my part and maybe his part was why, but like, neither of us were to blame. There's like a root situation because we have a love for each other. And I was on your website and I was looking at your work and it was like, there's this core love that people have. And it sounds like if you don't handle this stuff, that like core love, it's there. But after a while, like, is it enough? Like if you don't really resolve these paradigms or these patterns.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, most people that get divorced, they don't leave because they just like have no love for each other anymore. They get divorced because they don't feel connected anymore. Right? Like we can't live without feeling connected to our person. And these little things where, you know, the dishes and the laundry and the clothes on the floor, they don't seem like the big deals, but not a lot of people get divorced because there was an affair, right?
Mhm.
It's the little things that build up over time. And then there's another resentment and another resentment, and things aren't getting solved. So we just put all the shit in our sack and keep toting it around until someone says, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah. My dad called that the pinch theory.
The pinch theory.
Right? Because you put like a pinch of resentment. He was married to my mom for 40, a pinch of resentment, a pinch of resentment. And before you know it, you're like carrying around this big bag, right? And it started out with just like a little tiny thing, right? So, okay. So we're talking about patterns. And I know that your method has this PMP, practice makes permanent. And so I would guess practice makes permanent negative patterning, or practice can make permanent positive patterning. So what's this concept? How did you create it? And what is it? And how do we use it to start to create a loving, intimate, amazing relationship?
Great question. Thank you. Well, let's see. So, how do I back this one up? So I was a young gymnast, and when I first started my business 23 years ago, I worked with young little perfectionistic athletes. Now I work with adult perfectionists,
right?
And I was watching one day, and if you know anything about sports, everyone hears practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. And I was watching this little girl, and she's doing a backward flip, and I'm watching her do it with several mistakes. And I hear her coach yell out, keep going, little girl's name, practice makes perfect. And I was like, shit, no, what she's doing is making permanent. She's getting better at these mistakes every single
I love
time.
that. Wow.
And I just like a light bulb went off, and I started thinking about that as applied to everything in my life. And that's when I really started thinking about the anger piece. And I'm like, my gosh, I have learned how to be angry, and I've gotten really good at it. Like I've mastered that. And I really started thinking about like, well, what would it be like to try to master something else in its place? Right. And so, and I love to study neurology. So our company, we take in all of our programs, we take a body, mind, spirit, neurological perspective to help people, you know, advance as efficiently as possible. And once I really started to understand the neurology of that, it was like, oh my gosh, literally anger elicits so many chemicals, so like dopamine and serotonin and adrenaline, and your body's like, give me more, give me more, give me more. So if we don't know how to manage those chemicals and unwire them from these behaviors, then we keep going on and on and on. And you hear people all the time, oh, these habits are so hard to break. Well, that is for damn sure. I mean, truly, because our brain is designed for sameness, stay the same because it uses the least amount of energy. So when we're working through this practice makes permanent with our couples and individuals, we have them start to lay out goals that they want to add permanence to. It might be an emotional goal. It might be I want to eat salads for breakfast goal. And then look at what they want to decrease permanence to, and then marry those together so that they're really like learning how to uncouple and couple where they want to have intentionality. Does that make sense?
It totally does. I was thinking about what you're describing with the little gymnast, right? Is this old way of thinking of like, just keep trying harder.
Yes.
Right? Like, okay, do 100 round off, cartwheel flips, whatever it is, right? Just keep, like, if you keep doing it. And I think that as perfectionists and high achieving women that were sort of trained up that way, we believe like, okay, well, I just got to try harder. Right. And what I hear you saying is, well, actually trying harder is counterintuitive. Like it's counter. It's holding you back. It's wiring deeper and deeper and deeper the patterns that you don't want to make. So if this is resonating for anyone out there, stop trying harder. I think is what Shawn's trying to say.
Oh
Just
my
stop
God.
trying harder immediately. So when people uncouple we'll call them less desirable patterns and start
Mhm.
to align behaviors that feel in alignment and feel good, what are some of the traps that they might fall into, right? Because I assume that like without sort of maybe some help, your brain can't think its way out of your thoughts. So
Sure.
are there some like body connections or body signals, or how do you sort of make sure that you don't default?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so the whole idea of literally practice makes permanent, right? Like it requires practice and intentionality. We love to help people set up systems for making changes. So, because we're always trying to rely on our brain or our willpower, right? Like ask
Right.
anyone who's ever been on a diet.
Right.
And so if you're not emotionally prepared to take like the first step into change, right? So let's say you want to have a fight-free marriage. Okay.
Yep.
Well, you're not doing that in a week. Right. And so maybe it's like the first step is, okay, how do we dissolve disagreements around dinner time? Because we all, our family comes and we're hangry and who's cooking and I don't want to cook and you never help me. Right. And then this starts to escalate. It's like, okay, so how do we create this safe space around making new practices permanent at dinner time? It's like, okay, well, let's set up systems. All right. So Mondays are, we have hamburgers, and Tuesdays are always tacos, and Wednesdays is we take out from our favorite Thai restaurant. And then we have something we can count on so that our body, mind, spirit can get out of what you called a trap, which is like the perfect freaking word for it. Get out of the trap of this pattern that we stay in. Does that make sense?
It totally does. I'm thinking of so when I was on the road, everyone told us, Shawn, like, you're moving this rig, you have to do it as a couple. And like, whoever's driving is in here. And then whoever's out is like navigating, make sure you don't hit the trees, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Yep.
And so we were arguing every single time we did it. Right. Like, can you relate? Like, and I didn't know how to use the walkie-talkie. And I was like, over. I'm like holding the button down. But so we had this conversation and it was really mind-blowing talking about systems, because I was like, I'm not very good at this. And I'm like, just because all these people said we need to do it together and you need to do that and I'm supposed to do that, is this system working for us? And we had a whole conversation and he was like, you know what, actually, I can do it better. Like I can do it on my own. What I need you to do is, get ready and drive the Jeep. And, when I unhook it, you go take it over there. The bottom line is like, we literally had to look at the system and also like thinking about just because other people do something a certain way in a partnership, is that what works for us? And so really creating our own unique system. So how do you see people going, okay, well, this is what I think the role should be, or this is what my parents did. So when people are creating systems, what are some things they need to think about so that they don't systematize a new problem?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, so beautiful. So when you think about, from maybe a foundational perspective, when you think about a family or a marriage, I love people to think about it as a business. Okay. So a lot of the couples we work with, one or both are business owners. And so that really resonates with them. And it's at work, you're either financially profitable in your business or you're not. There's not like well, maybe we are.
Right.
And at home, we're emotionally profitable or not. Okay. So from a system standpoint, it makes so much sense. So when we're thinking about creating those systems and executing those systems, it can be really helpful. And this is like one of the best hacks: make a problem list. So anything that's a reoccurring problem, like you just said, we fight when we're trying to park our camper every time. So anything that there's a recurring incident, right? Like more than twice, then we know we need a system. So that just starts to shine a light on, okay, we keep fighting about this same dang thing, and how can we get out of it? Okay. So that's your first step. So make a problem list. It's so amazing. And then if you start looking at that problem list and go, okay, which one gives us the most bang for our buck?
Right.
Or which one is easiest, right? So to get a little practice, you can do one that's easy, or one that's like, okay, this is really, when we have a system to this, when we don't fight about this thing, we're going to really be rocking it out.
Okay. I love it.
So so then it's like identifying the system. Now to be like super candid, this is the most challenging piece, is like, what is the system?
Right.
Because so many people don't have, I mean, you know, as you well know, people have multi-million-dollar businesses that don't have great systems or SOPs in place, right? So creating that system can be the challenging piece. But if you start with the end in mind and sort of reverse engineer and go, okay, well, what would be ideal? How would we like this to flow? And if couples can give themselves an opportunity to sit down and like dream and scheme a little bit, like creative and playful, and allow all the ideas to come out, they can get there. They can get to a good system and back that out and go, okay, well, let's try that. Right. And then we can always, you know, edit it a little bit.
I love it. I love that. Ours was like, get out of, just don't have anything to do with that part.
Yeah. Right.
I will focus on the thing that I'm really good at. So yeah, but I think that's such really, really good advice. And also I think what I hear you saying is, you're going to try this out, right? Because what you said is, you know, you're going to put these systems in place, and then you're going to see what works, and then you're going to probably have some new problems. So as long as you approach it from a place where going back to the permanence makes perfect, you don't want to keep doing something that's broken. So you want to be like, hey, this isn't working. Let's go back and adjust, which is what we would do in a business, or what we would do in other things. Okay. I love it.
Right. And like measure and test it, and right. Because then when we get into like using different mechanisms, it helps couples move away from me, mine, I. Right.
Yeah.
So when you're fighting and using, as I talked about a little bit ago, emotional weapons, what we're really vying for is compliance, right? We're having a fit because they're not doing it how I want it, or on my time frame, or, you know, as fast as I thought it should be done. We're fighting for compliance.
Yeah.
So it's not like our little kid inside is like, that's not fair. You do it my way, or I'm going to throw a fit. Right. Like we're just, you know, we're adult children trying to get our way. So yes, when we can start to, you know, look at things from a perspective of like, okay, what's the best system for our family, or for our relationship, or for, you know, executing this thing, or getting the house cleaned, right? Then it's not about me or my way or what I want. It's literally what's the best thing for our family. So those are like, it gives you little peeks into outgrowing conflict. So it's not just about me, or me trying harder, or trying to get you to understand, which really simply means I want you to do it my way.
Code for I'm a little controlling.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you this. We could talk for hours. Okay. But I want to really ask you about this, because I know you have this part of your system around radical self-responsibility. And sometimes I see couples that are not, you know, in any sort of like formal commitment, but they've been together for a couple of years, and one partner is not taking responsibility for example, their part in fixing the system, or you change that, but I'm going to keep the same. So talk to me about radical self-responsibility, and what happens if the wife or the husband is the only one in implementation mode. Because I know people are like, yeah, that sounds great in theory, but my husband or my wife would never.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that is the $1 million question in a couple of ways. So when one person is growing really intentionally and the other partner is not, that is where we see the least stable time. Right. Like that that allows sustainability to be very, very low. When no one's doing their work, then, people can stay together as long as they're sort of on the same emotional level.
Right.
But when it starts to be like this, then we're moving into trouble zone.
Yeah.
So, and honestly, I mean, of course, I mean, it's what I do. This is where I would encourage people to start getting some support, right? And I hear all the time women are like, oh, he'll never do the work. He'll never agree to get on the phone. I'm telling you what, men are exceedingly pliable. They are so pliable. And in fact, I tell people all the time, once they start to understand, like, oh, this just makes sense, right? Like, oh, we have a system. Okay. Men are like, boom, they totally get it. They're not crossing as many emotional barriers as women do because
Right.
we're structured to be like everything is an emotional
Right.
situation. And they're like, makes sense, cool story. And so they get on board really quickly, but it does, there has to be an opportunity there that is a little different, that it's more about an invitation to like join the party, whatever that party is, whether you're hiring someone to work with, whether you're just like really at your wit's end and ready to do something different, approaching and usually it's the like we're usually the feminine is approaching the masculine, right? Doing it in a way that's inviting and loving, that is all about radical self-responsibility, right? Like how I show up is my responsibility. We talk about radical self-responsibility as being 100% in charge of, responsible for how I experience life, how I choose
I love that.
to experience life. And so, yeah, so if I want to experience life as like blaming and crabby and naggy, that is one choice, right? I can also choose to reclaim that. I can choose to approach my partner in a way that's loving and inviting or not, right? So these are all pieces of radical self-responsibility, but you can't make your partner be responsible if they're not ready for that.
I really want to just say that I think this is like such a clear way of articulating something that can be in the gray, because we get so many people in the, come to us in the should I stay or should I go, realm, right? And the longer you get invested or the more potential he has or whatever it is, right?
Oh yeah, married to potential.
Yeah, married to potential. And I think what's really amazing is, and I really want to just like shout out your brilliance on this, because you said like it's radical self-responsibility, right? There's the word radical is there. It's like, it is like rerouting, regrounding, like, revolutionary. And I am owning that. And so if I am constantly owning it and I'm making the invitation, the other person, whatever gender they are, either is responsible for that or they're not. And that's kind of freedom.
Yeah.
Right. As the feminine, if the feminine is usually the one saying, hey, come on, let's work on this or whatever it is. If you're saying, oh my God, wait, it's not my job to convince you to change. It's my job to talk about what's important for me. And then I can make the invitation. And do you think that I interviewed a male dating coach who's a relationship coach. His name is Brian Reeves. He was really amazing. He said, and I'm fascinated to know what you and your husband would say about this. He was like, I think for a lot of men, like deep down, they need to be understanding that there is something at stake, like seriously at stake.
Oh yeah.
He was like, I know that sounds harsh and kind of like very like dumbed down, but he's like, men kind of need to know like something's at stake. What do you and your husband think about that?
Oh, 100%. I agree.
I kind of agree too. It's like unpopular opinion.
Well, is it? Because men will just like, they'll skate along, and not because they're dumb or incapable. They're just like the path of least resistance. And also like the emotional path feels like a big mountain to them. They're like,
so brilliant.
That's Everest, right? Like, I don't want to climb Everest. But as soon as, so we tell our wives or feminine energy partners, immediately to say, I am not happy in this marriage and we are at risk of divorce.
Yeah.
Because that's what, then they're like, oh God, okay, what do we need to do?
Yeah.
But what happens more frequently is that women wait until they are done. And when a woman is done, she done.
Yeah.
When a man is done, they can be coaxed back if there's, something still there, but women are not, rarely the same. Right. And so, yeah, it's like, you gotta let him in. And that is true radical self-responsibility. If you're already fantasizing about divorce, we gotta let that little buddy in on it, because he's just like off in la la land. He just thinks he's in trouble all the time and can't do anything right. He doesn't
Oh my God, that's amazing. I saw so I'm new to TikTok. I say this every week because I'm just like, I didn't know. I thought there was just dancing teenagers on there, but it's actually been really interesting. But there was a guy on there and he did this little thing and it was like maybe only 30 seconds, but he said exactly what you said. And he said, because he was speaking to men, and he basically said, when your woman is done, you know it's done. And when you know that, it's too late.
Yeah. Right.
Right. I mean, I was like, bingo, like, follow. But really, I think what you're saying is, and I think so many women might be afraid to do that because of the language in our culture around ultimatum, right? Like we're ashamed almost if we say like, I have a need that is really great and you need to hear this. Before we go, can you just talk about like the mythology of like ultimatums, or I am seriously unhappy and we are at risk of, right? How do you wrap your head around that and be okay to like really state that need from a place of being very, very adamant about it?
Yeah. Such a great, you ask the best questions. So one, it's like, it's a serious act of vulnerability.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Right. So when we tell the truth in a way that's not like, you rah, 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 when we come to the table and say, I'm unhappy in this marriage and we're at risk of getting a divorce, something has got to change. That is deep, unbridled vulnerability, because it's easy to yell.
Yeah.
Right. It's easy to be mad and throw a tantrum and slam doors. That's easy. The vulnerability piece and telling the truth, that's hard. And if you have a deal breaker, my gosh, don't you think the person that lives with you ought to know about it? To me, that's just being responsible to your partner. We're not responsible for them, but being responsible to them so that they can be in the know. Because I mean, dudes are blindsided all the time, and women are like, how do they not know? But the feminine and masculine energies are very, very different, and they're just like getting hit by a bolt of lightning, and she's like, "What are you, an idiot?"
Yeah, exactly. Sorry. Okay, so, last question. So then, tying it all together. So then, how can RSR, radical self-responsibility, and PMP, and I want to get this right, practice makes permanent. How can we use, if we're going to make one shift in our relationship today, how can we use those together to start to empower and advocate for ourselves to create a harmonious connection?
Love it. I guess I would say I would piggyback off of what we were just discussing. And one of the most powerful places to start mending a marriage, and this does take self-trust because it's scary to be vulnerable, right? But practicing that vulnerability piece is in a way that's radically self-responsible is the whole like, I am unhappy. What can we do? Right? So you're practicing vulnerability, and every time we practice it, we feel braver. Our neurotransmitters change. We actually have, when we start practicing vulnerability, our neurotransmitters start having a party. It's scary at first, and then the dopamine just starts dripping, and you're like, oh,
I just loved on myself.
Exactly. So it feels like it's like, oh, you can trade your glass of wine for a little vulnerability.
Oh.
So pairing those two together, that radical self-responsibility is truly an act of vulnerability.
Oh, that's so, so beautiful. And I just, all of you are listening, go back and rewind that part where Shawn said, like, being angry is easy, blame is easy, and really life check yourself on, do you fall into that like rage, blame, too busy, too tired, and you just like been living that way for a really long ass time.
Yeah.
Life is short, and I always say, like, we didn't come this far to just get this far.
Yes, I love that.
And it's like, we're not too needy. And I think that there's so many great men, my husband, your husband, other men, right? Who were like, wait, like, yeah, do I love the emotional conversation? Maybe not, right? Is this hard for me to like create a new pattern? But I love you and I am so committed and like, let's grow together. And that's the man that you want to find. And so when you're dating or you've been dating 6 months and you have these challenges, this is really just a great process to see, like, does this guy have what I need in the growth department for the long term, right? So it applies whether you're dating or you're already in a committed partnership.
Amen, sister.
I love it. Awesome. You are so amazing. Where is your camper parked now?
We are in Phoenix, Arizona, doing some snowbirding.
Oh my God, I'm literally in Scottsdale right now.
Are you serious?
We need to have coffee.
Oh, for sure.
So funny. I'm like, wait, where are you? I feel like there's some sun going on.
Oh
Fantastic. See, we are not only aligned spiritually, but right now geographically, which when I'm a nomad, you're a nomad. The stars are aligned. Ladies, I'm in love with Shawn, and now you should be in love with Shawn. And I bet her husband's just as cool as she is. So check out the show notes. You can check them out on reimaginelove.com. They have a cool Facebook group. They have a book, Living for Love. It's on Amazon. All of this will be in the show notes. They're also on Instagram at Dr. Shawn Haywood, and it's spelled SHAWN, in case you weren't sure about that. You can follow us on Instagram at Dating with Dignity. Come play with us on TikTok. Every day there are amazing hacks and truths, and it's been really fun putting that together. So come join that amazing community. And whatever you do, share this with a friend in need, rewind, re-listen, and do something about it. Be in action. Don't just life check yourself. Check yourself. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now. Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. So if being in an intimate relationship in which you feel 100% seen, heard, and accepted by a high caliber man is a priority for you right now, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit for working with me and my team at Dating with Dignity, here's what I want you to do. Just head over to DWD VIP, that's D as in dating, W, D as in dating, VIP.com, and book a call to speak with my team. We'll get on the phone with you for about 60 minutes, and you'll get crystal clear on what's stopping you from finding true love right now. We'll also take a look at what you want to create, what you want your whole life to look like when you're able to finally be fully expressed as a woman in a healthy relationship with an incredible guy. And if we can help you get from where you are right now to where you want to be, we will show you the fastest path possible that makes sense for you to do that. We help smart, successful women all over the world solve this one missing piece in their life so they can finally have it all. So to see if we can help you do the same thing, head over to DWDVIP.com. I'm Marni Batista, and let's talk soon.